Hi all and welcome to Back to Normal Thursday Truth, Honour and Integrity show. My name's Thomas Williams and I've managed to cobble together a show for this week. I've been away for the best part of the last week, dodging snipers, black helicopters and all kinds of clowns to the left, and they are jokers. We'll have some messages for them later. Anyway, let's get into the show. It's just a sad world we live in. You can't go on vacation without entourages turning up. But there you go. It's the life you live. Right. I've got a shortened version of news. I've got I've got some intel and a load of op-ed pieces, and some intel is rather interesting. I'll tell you that for nothing. Right, details of the show and the link for the show to listen live or the archive is www.spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live, and all the archives are on the website thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. If you're new to THI and you would like to gain the essence of the show, listen to the section on that site, must listen in order, and you will get the gist of what this show's all about. Facebook, Truth, Honour and Integrity. We have a Facebook social media alternative site called MeWe, MEWE.com, and that's Truth, Honour and Integrity. If you're having difficulty locating it, you can send a request to this email, which is also for the show, questions or comments or things you just want to say, and it's truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. We have the People's Club website link, and that's thepeoplesclub.org. That's for the foundation when we get up and running on that. And right, let's get into some news. Saturday at 1 p.m, I think it is, if memory serves me correctly, I will be appearing on a round table show discussion with the OYM lads and some other people dotted around the world. So if you want to tune in on that, I'll get the OYM lads to send the link over, and that's this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right, like I said, I haven't got much news because it's access to communications this week was kind of cut down in many ways, but here we go. We'll start off with North and South Korea. Now, Trump obviously played a big role, and his team, in a potential reunification of North and South Korea. It certainly averted any possible wars or fun and games. And there's a summit coming up, possibly in Singapore, maybe somewhere else, depending on security. But whilst that's all going on, sport in North and South Korea is building bridges big time. Now, of course, it was just 3 months ago since what was deemed the Peace Olympics were held in South Korea, and just days after the leaders of the two countries pledged to rid the Korean peninsula of nuclear weapons. So what sporting events have they been building bridges? Well, table tennis. So rather than compete against each other amid a backdrop of inter-Korean reconciliation, the two countries who were technically still at war, but I don't think that's the case anymore, were due to meet in the quarter-finals of the World Team Table Tennis Championships in Sweden. But they both decided to lay down their bats and shake hands in order to form a unified team. And incredibly, and perhaps for the first time in sport and competition, the tournament's organisers agreed the two teams could merge, and they went on to face either Japan or Ukraine. I don't know the results of that. I don't think it matters. But it's an extraordinary event, you know, and this plays out in many theatres around the world. There's events in North and Southern Ireland where the peoples, Catholic and the Protestants, are uniting together. Of course, that rarely makes the news. And it's the same between Palestinian people and Israeli people. There's lots of ongoing reconciliation between them. Again, that doesn't get reported, because the last thing they want is the people getting together. You know why. And that's the key to everything at the end of the day. Not play their game with divide and conquer. So kudos to the two teams in the table tennis. And of course this is the second time they've done that. In February in the Winter Olympics, they had a unified women's ice hockey team as well. Good stuff. And just when you thought it was safe, up popped the cryptocurrencies again. And they're now initiating a new launch of what is described as Tangem notes. They're not producing super notes with fake application numbers. They're now releasing what's known as smart banknotes with a chip. Do we really want more chipped materials? I would suggest not. And it's developed by Samsung Semiconductor. Go figure, Samsung, they of the TVs with the video projecting out, and reportedly allow consumers to physically carry Bitcoin stored in denominations of 0.01, which is about $96, and 0.5 of 1%, which is about $482. And the first pilot batch, consisting of 10,000 notes, will be shipped from Singapore. Go figure. Cabal stronghold. To potential partners and distributors around the world. And according to the press release anyway, the idea behind creating physical notes of Bitcoin was in part to increase the ease of spending crypto, fresher currencies, and improving the simplicity and security of acquiring, owning and circulating cryptocurrencies. Singapore has developed a reputation as a hub for cryptocurrencies, go figure, and also blockchain development in Asia. Again, go figure. Same people. Chinese elders, Rothschilds, all the clowns. And the Singapore FinTech Association and the FinTech Association of Japan signed a memorandum of understanding to collaborate on FinTech development. FinTech, all very maritime again, isn't it? Anyway, additionally, China and Singapore completed a shipment of gasoline entirely using blockchain technology in early April, and in March of this year, Singapore's central bank reaffirmed its commitment to using blockchain for cross-border payments. Slush funds is a better term for that. So, as I mentioned just before, administration officials have been instructed to move forward with plans to convene an historic summit between Donald Trump and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, which is supposedly going to take place in Singapore. Now, according to people familiar with the plans, the decision is ultimately up to Mr. Trump, and he said on Wednesday he would announce the time and location in 3 days. And speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump ruled out the demilitarized zone on the Korean border as a potential location for the talks with Kim. Singapore and the DMZ are the only two places Trump has floated in public as potential venues for the meeting. And the Southeast Southeast Asian city-state has been the preferred location among US officials, who saw its neutrality as an advantage over locations closer to Pyongyang. Argentina. You're going to start hearing a lot about South America. There's atrocities going on right across that whole continent, and perhaps it's time those countries all got together. The deals are on the table, and turf the clowns out. So Argentina, whose currency is tied in with the dollar, like many others, is now in desperate financial straits, along with Ecuador, Venezuela, Brazil, Chile, Peru, you name it, plus all Central America. And it's deliberate. And according to This Week, they are about to start talks about financing a deal with the IMF, except the IMF is defunct. For those operating as the IMF should be the real term, and it's reportedly seeking $30 billion to refinance the country, and the Finance Minister, Nicolas de Jonge, is due to fly to the IMF's Washington offices this week after recent turmoil saw interest rates hit 40% this week, 40. President Mauricio Macri said the IMF aid would strengthen growth. No, it won't. It will roll you into a deeper debt program and help avoid crises of the past. No, the same people put you in those crises. When are you going to go with something different? Repeating the same things over and over is the height of stupidity. The talks come 17 years after Argentina defaulted on its debts and 12 years since it severed ties with the IMF. Every country has severed ties with the IMF, and it should stick to it no matter what stormtroopers turn up and threaten certain countries. We'll have more on that later. Mr. Macri said it in an address to the nation on Tuesday, just a few minutes ago. Macri's pro-market reforms, and last week the central bank raised interest from 33.25% to 40%, and I suspect that's going to go higher again. And many people still blame the IMF austerity requirements for policies that led to a financial and economic meltdown back in 2001 and 2002 that left millions of middle-class Argentines in poverty. Sound familiar? Yes, that's what they've been doing, and that's what they've always done, and that's what they will always continue to do until countries grow a set and turf them out permanently. You have the directive, you have the documents supporting it. Don't deal with goons. Let's go forward with a new way. And back in 2002, Argentina eventually defaulted on its debts, and although its last IMF loan was paid down in 2006, and the country severed its ties with the Washington-based body. Go figure. There's a couple of companies who love to rape the consumer. No change there. But this is a bit of a nondescript story, but it's also evidence of the continued desire to create money, even if it's for 1 or 2 days. It's another sign of the lack of liquidity. You're going to see a lot of these type of scams, because that's what it is. And this was perpetrated by Asda, better known as Walmart. And following the people protesting about it, Asda has suspended a controversial £99, which is roughly $135, petrol pump deposit trial. So you put your card in to buy gas, and petrol as it's called over there, and your card was charged £99, roughly $135 on top of the fuel purchase. Asda said the deposit was a holding charge to ensure customers had enough money to pay for their fuel. What a load of bollocks that is, and lies. It's just, yet again, let's take money. Imagine how many people buy gas in a day in the UK, and they're putting £99 in their account for every one. Very quickly that'll mount up, which goes on into a short-term market employ with high yield earnings, and they're making a tidy packet off it. It just doesn't end. But following a backlash from the people, Asda said it would suspend, not cancel, suspend the scheme pending review, because we always want to do the right thing for our customers. Big liars. One customer, Jade Louise, said when she saw a £99 debit on her online bank after topping up the weekend, but the money never left her account, according to the supermarket and banks. And again, big liars. And the trial was introduced in 3 stations to assess if it would help cut down fraud and stop people inadvertently going into the red. Since when are they interested in that? And the deposit was intended to be cancelled as soon as the correct value is paid. Yes, well, the banks just delay taking the payment for the purchase, and so the £99 stays on hold, which then, knowing the way most people operate, if you say that you've got 2 cars and the husband and wife tops the car up, and suddenly you think you've paid £40-50 or $60-70 for gas, and then you've got to add near £200, which is about $270, and they're trying to tell you that it's to stop people going into the red when they didn't even know. That's one way to put people into the red. Will they pay back the overdraft? No. So Asda said the scheme requires coordination between MasterCard and Visa and its customers' banks, and some banks are not able to comply. The supermarket said, yeah, thieves. There's another group of thieves, Royal Bank of Scotland, and it has agreed this week to pay a $4.9 billion penalty with US regulators to end a long-running probe into its actions in the lead-up to the financial crisis. RBS boss Ross McEwan said the agreement in principle with the US Justice Department was a milestone, and the probe into Royal Bank of Scotland's sale of financial products from 2005 through 2007 has been a financial cloud hanging over the bank. What about the arrests? It's only been hanging over the people, certainly not the CEOs. And DOJ said further details must be negotiated before a final deal is done. And today's announcement, Mr. McEwan said, is a milestone moment for the bank, and reaching this settlement in principle with the US Department of Justice will, when finalised, allows us to deal with this significant remaining legacy issue, and is the price we have to pay for the global ambitions pursued by this bank before the crisis. One has to wonder why a US Department of Justice is suing and imposing fines on UK banks. Perhaps I'll find that out in the next show. And he went on and said that removing the uncertainty would mean that Royal Bank in Scotland, bailed out by the UK taxpayer, remember all the bailouts in 2008, would make the bank much stronger. RBS said about 3.6 billion of the penalty would be covered by money already set aside. Yeah, probably by charging £99 for people on fuel. Many analysts suspected the settlement figure would be much higher than 4.9 billion. Last two news pieces before we have a small music break, and then we'll go back and we'll go straight into the Intel and the op-ed pieces. So we will have time for questions this week. The questions held over from previous weeks are all still in there, so we'll get through them tonight as well. President Trump's administration has quietly axed today the US Space Agency's NASA's monitoring system into greenhouse gases. And the carbon monitoring system, a $10 million a year project which remotely tracks the world's flow of carbon dioxide, is to lose funding. Science magazine reports that its loss jeopardises the ability to measure national emissions cuts as agreed by nations in the Paris climate deal, except we're not in it, so we don't have to abide by it. And it's nothing to do with climate at all. It's more to do with stealing every country's in-ground resources, hidden in the small font on page 17,432, subsection 2, paragraph 3. You know how they work it. But the official announcement of or removal from the Paris Climate Agreement is not finalised until 2020, but the US continues to be part of the International Climate Accord in essence, but not paying for it, and certainly not handing over in-ground resources like Anne tried to do, and Obama. And US officials are currently in Germany as part of talks to outline a detailed rulebook for the 2015 Paris Agreement, and they are reportedly insisting on strong rules for reporting and monitoring greenhouse gas emissions, which these impose strong rules and reporting for criminal clowns. Still not heard back from the mainstream media of all the files they were sent, by the way. Not a surprise, but it does put them on notice. Fewer than half of the foreign leaders that have been invited to the US Embassy relocation ceremony in Jerusalem have actually accepted the invitation. Some 30 foreign diplomats accepted the invitation to the US Embassy's opening ceremony, which is scheduled for this Sunday. And the invitation was issued by Israeli Foreign Ministry to diplomats from 86 foreign states. But 3 days now before the ceremony, fewer than half of the recipients have said that they will be attending. So just 30 of the 86 ambassadors have responded that they will be going. The Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesperson Emmanuel Nashon said that we hope that all the ambassadors will arrive, but up to now 12 countries have already said that they refused the invitation, either due to timing or other conflicts or out of principle. Amongst those to refuse are Australia, Germany, Ireland, Malta, Mexico, Portugal, Poland, Russia and Sweden. And interestingly, the three states commonly perceived as opposing the embassy move, Hungary, the Czech Republic and Bulgaria, have accepted the invitation, and two countries are seen as friendly to the Israeli government policy, Romania and Austria, have yet to announce their decision whether they're going on or not. But it's also expected that a number of EU states, including the UK, France and Germany, are going to boycott the event. Yes, indeed. Shall we read a bit more on with other stuff? No, let's have a short an early music break, and then I'm going to come back with some intel and a load of op-ed pieces, and then another piece of intel further along. Let's get this in. Hi all, and welcome back. Right, let's get into some of the meat of the show, and we're going to start with Iran. Trump obviously cancelled the deal, but the Iran deal is less about nuclear capabilities and more about slush funds being channeled through Iran by Obama and Hillary Clinton. Now, the 1.6 billion paid in cash directly to Iran was involved in that deal with no apparent oversight or questioning until now. And that's being looked into heavily by various departments and the administration of Trump. But I will warn, full disclosure on what went on with that 1.6 billion paid in cash on Iran will lead to high-level arrests eventually. Be patient. Now, Iran has been the source of skullduggery going back to the 1970s. This has been going on a long time. Hezbollah, Muslim Brotherhood, etc., etc., all bought and paid for by the same clowns out of the agencies here. And back in the 70s, there was the Shah removal and then the Ayatollah. Most people may remember the Iran-Contra scandal with Oliver North. Funny he turns up as the head of the NRA this week, the new head of the NRA, as I understand it. But the funds that went into Iran were being funneled into Hezbollah and all kinds of other rogue mercenary-style groups. And then they were moved into the United Arab Emirates to set up that country for future issues. This is how they operate. And anyway, that was the cover-up version, as others had worked it out and what they were up to. And this involves the Benghazi, because it's all rolled in. It's all about arms and other trafficking, tech smuggling, overthrow, slush fund actions, and creating a real but ultimately fake army to cause future issues in the Middle East. You know, look what's going on now. You've got Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, obviously Yemen, Oman, Saudi Arabia. They're all fighting. Southern Turkey as well. And that whole region is a powder keg. And this goes back to ancient history. it's the same region. And ultimately, it needs some cool heads, not military clowns going in dick swinging, saying our weapons are bigger than yours and all that nonsense. Perhaps they should leave it to the people, because ultimately the people will sort it out amongst themselves. But the problem is we send in military people to do negotiations, not only on this but on many other things, and it rarely comes out well. I mentioned South America. This is the second part of the intel. Ecuador was sent funds to kick-start their economy last week, along with Argentina. What happened next, which is why I put the news portion about Argentina in, is the IMF sent what is amounts to stormtroopers to the central banks in Ecuador and threatened them to not receive the funds from the trust. This is what's going on currently, and this also applied in certain unnamed African countries as well at the same time. Now, some of them countries are backing down and some of the countries are not. I'm not at liberty to discuss which ones are and which ones aren't. It's another powder keg, and there's a lot of threats going on. But it's time all the countries stood up together to these people and their organisations. As mentioned earlier, the IMF's not interested in the growth of your country. It's about stealing the resources. They push you into a debt-based system, put you in loans that you think are good for the country, but they're not. And it's all designed, when they crash it, to then say, well, you can't pay your debt back, so you give us this island, or you give us this port, or you give us this airport, or you give us these roads, or you give us these in-ground resources. This is what they've done globally. And they've proven over and over again that they rape countries, not help or supply. And it's time the countries banded together, be it continents or groups of countries, and remove these clowns. Now, the IMF, along with the World Bank and other central banks, have systematically looted every country. And despite all that, and the rather ironic thing is they still can't fund jack shit, despite all the looting. Why? Because they've leveraged everything, and they've also pledged everything to the trust, which holds vast quantities of assets, which they're not getting back. That's going to go back to the countries. And like I said, they come in with offers of loans here and there, and then they jack up the interest rates until the country defaults on the debt. And this is when they start saying, well, we'll have to have this island, this port, this airport, or this resource to pay off the bogus debt, which is what it is, because they haven't lent anything. They've used the trust to lend it, which is an asset, not a deficit. And this is, as I say, as how and why much of the land and resources around the world ended up in the control of the trust. And you would think that that was enough. But no, they went on and leveraged those assets into oblivion following that. And so this is kind of where we stand today with regards to the IMF and this came in today. basically the quantum system, and Kim and the trust and their team have found today an underground network of thieves, and what they've been doing is they are putting their particular notification number on accounts in banks. So say one of you goes in to take money out of your account, and you've been given money by the trust. They are installing their account numbers over the top of your account. Then when the client goes to make a transfer of funds, they notify their stooges in the banks to transfer it to their accounts. So far we have found several accounts which have received funds. All of them are linked to Rothschilds or known Dragon family members. Now this is kind of going on all over the world currently. Again, it's another example of the lack of liquidity, that they've got to steal everything. And they've been doing this through the phone network, and this is kind of the way they've been stealing from governments as well, using a network of people working in central banks. Well, I think it's time again countries to step in and shut the central banks down, nationalise it and create a new one and shut them down. Now this has only been happening over the last couple of days, or a couple of days after we closed all the back doors on the old system and accounts last week, but rest assured it was detected within hours of what was going on, and this mode will also be blocked as well. So that little game ended rather quickly. Next portion of intel. The RV, or hashtag Operation Stupidity, has failed again twice this week, at least twice. And on they roll, no change there then. But as forecasted last week, who do they blame now for their continued failure? Well, you guessed it, it's Kim and the Manor World Holding Trust. It's predictable. As night follows day, let's find a new boogeyman, or woman this time, to blame for their own stupidity and failure. Except it's not a failure, it's a simple economic fact. And I hope people who still follow this total bullshittery of RVs realise how and why it will always fail. And here's why. For the cabal, and it is the cabal, to pull off the RV, they would require $4.2 quadrillion in assets to do so. Except that ain't that much to begin with. Even with their ridiculous leveraging or dodgy derivatives betting, which is just creating the illusion, there's not enough to cover it. That's why it never ever work. And also they have to put up 10%, that's the 10% to put up as an asset base to go forward with it. And due to the new quantum system that is designed not to cheat into oblivion and make all the public pay for their stupidity, that was one of the portions installed to prevent that kind of banking lunacy. Now, for those of you who run out of fingers trying to equate what 4.25 quadrillion equates to, 40 years, 40 years, global GDP is what that is. So 40 years of what everyone spends in a year around the world is what they require to pull off the RV. Do people seriously still think that will go ahead? Truth to say is stranger than fiction. In their world of illusion it is. Absolutely. 40 years global GDP. But never mind, it's happening again on Saturday, or Monday, or Wednesday. If that fails, don't forget, it'll definitely be 9 o'clock the following morning in their world. Back to reality. That's why I've said all along, it will never ever go ahead. Now, following the attempts over the last few weeks of the team known as Kingdom of Mana and Jesper Ellerman, I subsequently, as there was a lot of words going to and fro, accusations here and accusations there, I basically called their bluff and asked them to deliver the stated proof, according to them, that Kim is no longer the trustee. It's funny, they're saying she's no longer the trustee, and yet at the same time she can block the RV. I'm sorry, not all follow your and their twisted illogical thinking process. So the solutions were simple. Jesper was requested to show valid proof of the claims that Kim is not the actual trustee of the Mana World Holding Trust, and Jesper to show people around the world he can and has access to the trust account. And we requested full proof within 72 hours, which ended on midnight on Tuesday. And we left it until Tuesday, as we knew they will be busy again on Monday, another RV attempt, to show this group the full evidence, and that I would retract claims against Jesper and the Kingdom of Mana group and subsequently apologise. Failure after 72 hours, and the members of this group on this page will then have their answers as well. Obviously we would expect them to reciprocate with apologies to this group. Well, Jesper and the Kingdom of Mana guys failed to deliver, and it's up to the listeners now to decide where they choose to put their energy going forward. And I hope one day that the puppets sent to disrupt our page will see through the illusion Jesper and his close associates are putting out. Now, to wrap up this piece, as we will not be hoping never to mention them again. It's a waste of energy. But the followers of Kingdom of Mana need to ask for the same proof themselves and put Jesper, or is it King Julius, or is it Archangel Michael and Uriel, in lieu of statements made against Kim. Where is his proof? He is the trustee and not Kim. Where is his proof he can access the quantum system and pull funds out? Because once you find that out, then you have your answers. But if Jesper doesn't give you that clarity, you have a choice to make. But what is the lengths people and others will go to delay Kim and her quest to release the funds back to the true owners, which is we the people, is staggering. Right, we're going to have one more piece and then a music break, and then we're going to come back with more op-ed pieces and another piece of intel, a key piece. But this will make you laugh. The outset of it's not funny, as I found out this week. But this didn't take place this week. It took place a number of weeks ago, just to clarify. And following another attempt to snatch or eliminate Kim, of which there have been many, perpetrated by either Anne, Obama, who sent Saudi nationals with Oman passports under the guise of Muslim Brotherhood in via South America through the border to try and eliminate Kim, Dick Cheney, or Dickhead Cheney, and Bush. Now, it's part of the way life is. They don't want to lose their control, and they don't like it. But I would thought I would share a funny outcome of one of those events. Is Cheney sent armed goons to try and track her down, and descended on a particular place they think she was located. Well, these goons, like the ones that went before them, including the MS-13 crew sent by Bush, paid a heavy price for their stupidity. But the funny aspect of it all was Mr. Cheney has a vacation home in a certain region in America, and someone borrowed a bulldozer and completely flattened Cheney's home to the ground. Utter classic, that. Cheney, that's why they thought he was dead, then fled to his 8-level underground bunker in his home in Montana, and has not been seen since. So, here's a song for the bulldozer people, and I hope you keep busy with that particular machine. We have a number of names you can carry. Keep your eyes on the road and your hands upon the wheel, and let's bulldoze some Cabal homes. Sounds like a lot of fun to me. I'm sure many of the listeners would like that job. Completely flattened. Well, you play with fire, sometimes you get burnt. Here's hoping you get burnt more often going forward. Right, some more op-ed and news, and another important piece of intel. But the people should watch. Now, this is potentially significant for the Trump administration if they are to do the right thing. Because at that point, Trump will have 3 judges who are aligned with his team. Remember, there's 9. So 2 more, and it's game over in the Supreme Justice stakes. Watch that closely. I believe they're messing with the show tonight. I'm not surprised in that one iota, given the fun and games went on this week. But on we go. This is a report, and I would suggest these figures are low. They're high, but they're low, if you get my meaning. And the International Labour Organization estimates there are 20.9 million human trafficking victims worldwide. 20.9 million. I think it's actually higher. In fact, I'm sure it's higher, but that's bad enough. Now, to put that into perspective, this is equal to the population of all the following states combined: Wyoming, Vermont, DC, North Dakota, Alaska, South Dakota, Delaware, Montana, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, Hawaii, Idaho, West Virginia, Nebraska, New Mexico, Nevada, and Kansas. That tells you the depth of it. And like the famous saying, I guess they're really not in Kansas anymore, are they? Staggering figures. Further reports is 4.5 million people are trapped in forced sex trafficking around the globe. Again, I think that's a lot higher, which is a higher number than the population of 26 states in America. So half the states of America have less of a population than those being sex trafficked. And according to the figures, at least 100,000 children are prostituted annually in the United States, adding to the $9.8 billion US sex trafficking industry. Where there's money, there's crime, there always is. And the 100,000 is the ones they keep. There's around 500,000 to 900,000 who go missing permanently each year out of the United States alone. And that's the official figures. Not conspiracy guesstimates. Official database. Now, this next piece is something to ponder on. So it is a theory at this point, but I think I've seen sufficient patterns that may support it. Now, it's said that Earth is the nexus planet, not only for this solar system, but possibly the galaxy and even the universe. Why is it the key? Well, I believe a lot to do is because of the resources here are not replicated anywhere else. There's an absolute vast array of species, plant life, minerals, etc. I don't think that diversity is replicated on any other world, as I understand it. It's like a potpourri of life and resources. But there's one aspect, I think, that may be overlooked, and another possible reason why Earth is the key. Bearing in mind that 70% of our world trade was off-world. I say was, because it was cut off. And the reason I've done this piece is to get people thinking, as I believe all resources here are replenished. Take oil, for example. You take oil out of the ground, and science tells you it gets to a point where it runs out, and you get to a point what they have deemed peak oil. In other words, it's no longer economically viable to scoop the oil out of the ground because it gets to the shale level. Except if you leave an empty, easy flowing oil well for 10 years, it fills back up again. It replenishes the oil in the well. So that ends that type of bullshittery that they put out. It's all fossil fuel. It's not fossil fuel at all. It's abiotic. But there is an ET race here that are here for seeds for their home world. Maybe that's why they came here. What if everything here is replenishable? No matter how much you dig or drill up, something to ponder on. Where do we go next? Let's put this piece out. You often hear people saying, get this app or get this network or get this computer because it's encrypted and they can't spy on you or listen to you, etc., etc. I need to make things clear, as I wouldn't bother. As it stands, and it may not be in the future, they have too many back doors to gain access, including the encrypted versions also. Why? Because the encryption tech came from Langley. You don't think they wouldn't put a back door in the encryption, do you? So there is nothing encryption about it because Langley still has access. Shall we do this piece now? Maybe not. Let's do this now. Right, this is another Intel piece. Two of them, in fact. And it's to do with the SS small p, the Nazi rogue space element people. And they've been attempting to build new time portals in the mountains in the southwest of America and other regions around the world. And it's for access to get out of here and restart trade, and also gain access to the inner heaven, which is below, which is now cut off to them. Now what they are trying to do is create a new element to get around the closed portals, and they think they are going to build labs in the hills. That will not end well, trust me. Unpentium indeed. That will be blocked here until you step down and act in the right manner, or face being wiped out altogether. Now, the second portion of it is the SS small p, who are linked with Corey Good, Wilcock, Sather. Whether they're aware, or Good should be aware. Whether the other two clans are aware remains to be seen. But this is what the SS small p are. They're aligned, most of them are aligned with rogue elements within Langley, who were formerly known as OSS. Same people. Project Paperclip, Project Overcast. Linked with the Aldebrands and the Thule people, who they continue to, at least one of them, hold hostage to this day. When the Thule THULE people realised where it was going, they pulled out, and they've held one of their members hostage for at least 70 years. The rest they killed. Now, following meetings with certain beings which took place over the past week, and other meetings in previous months, the SSP are now under a shoot to kill policy. They've been declared a terrorist organisation because they've been interfering in regions they shouldn't be and trying to gain access in places that they are not allowed. Like I said earlier, they're blocked from going below and also blocked from getting out. Now the meeting this week was with varying greys, at least 3 versions of them, tall whites, some of the gins, the dark smoky black spirits, the aquatic group, and also the raptors. Some of them are known as the saurians. And those groups are no longer allowing them, the SSP, access to their world underground anymore. And should the SSP do so, the ET groups down there can deliver a shoot to kill, as the SSP entry into their domain is considered an act of war and against the peace treaty which is now imposed. The SSP need to quit their games and the naval group supporting it. And I don't suspect they will, but as they appear they will go to any lengths to exercise their control, all at the behest of the Draco and the family with the most DNA resembling that race, known as the Rothschilds. Yes, the reps. Says a lot, doesn't it? The SSP are getting desperate to gain access back to the portals so they can acquire certain rogue technology which will be weaponized like everything else they have, but they will not be allowed to do so. A recent incursion into the underground realm didn't end too well. I saw evidence of that myself. It didn't end too well. And if they think they can take on the beings below, good luck with that, as you've recently found out. Some of the volcano eruptions around the world are not what you think. They were set off from below to deny the SS small p access to the portals. Hawaii may well be an example of that. Mount Cook in New Zealand, Kashmir is another region, the Alps is another, and basically the whole of the southwest of America. Now, of the various species down there, one race in particular, which I think was the Arcturians, who have major access to technology but don't use it. And their sole purpose here is botany. Why? Because the Draco SSP destroyed their homeworld with the desert creating tech is why. These clowns have weapons that turn lush, tropical and fertile land into a desert in a blink of an eye. This is why the Earth has got desert regions. We didn't have originally any desert regions. That's all an example of high-tech weaponry. So this particular group came here for samples and testing to see if they would be able to then reseed their homeworld and return and restore it. Now I'm hoping the interaction with them provides a solution for both of us to work together and delete the rogue elements here and get them a safe passage out of here and back to restoring their homeworld. This applies to all other races here. Some of them were trapped here, some of them have been here long before us. And they were trapped in a Draco-Mantid system. Draco are the thugs, military element, Mantids are the brains and the technology element. Sounds like I've been cut off. Let me just check. No, change in tone. Whilst they are trapped here currently, formerly it was the Draco-Mantid system, they're trapped here currently by a more benevolent system to rout out the rogue ETs and also rogue humans here. But it won't always be the case that that quarantine will be in place. So the ones who want to return home quicker, I'm asking you again and appealing to those that we spoke to last week to come and support us in our quest to remove the dark forces once and for all. We can all work together. We've proven that in a short space of time. Now, what bothers me is our whole world and its peoples are defined by clowns, reptiles and bloodline families, all of which their DNA, and I mean all the bloodline families, are suspected to not be human. And that defines, that group of beings appears to define all humans. We're not all like that. Given an opportunity to step forward, I'm sure there'll be a number of people off this planet who would love to go and help reseed your planet. There's a number of people who would love to go and reseed and rebirth this planet as well. That's been destroyed, not by the people, but by the same clowns. Draco, Mantids, Rothschilds, bloodline families, raping and stealing. It's not only this world they've done it, they've done it in thousands of other worlds. The time is for us all to come together. We're not all the same. We'll get by with a little help from some small friends and some larger ones. Right. This week, some may have experienced it. Starting Sunday through Monday, an increase in the energies. It was designed, and it will be beneficial. It will disrupt some people. It's given you a chance to realise you haven't done enough inner work. And we kept banging on about it, shadow work and the inner work. As you do that, you increase your own frequency. You increase your own frequency will have massive beneficial effects going forward when the key decision time comes. Bear that in mind. Now, this is a piece I did last week. I didn't get a chance to cover. And another piece that was born out of some comments that have been made this week. And the first piece is, there comes a time, when I think many of you are facing that now, when you decide when is enough really enough. And back in November of 2016, I made a statement on one of the shows. It's time to pull back from the unawakened and let them face their own consequences. At the time, it brought a mixed response. A few agreed with it, and many didn't. And both reactions are valid. Neither is right and neither is wrong. It's all a matter of your own choice. But given some of the staggeringly awful information out recently, whether it be trafficking, child sexual abuse and torture and all the other stuff, most of which was declared by the same ignorers of truth or facts as conspiracies, remember, I wonder whether it's time for a new statement to be made to those people. Well, last week, or the week before, I asked for all to bombard the news media for spouting propaganda, distortion and lies. And again, it is a valid thing to do. We should not allow them to continue with free rein in that mode. We can disrupt their blogs and eventually force them into making a real choice. Now, I often hear people vainly trying to wake people up, and you often hear, but they won't listen, Thomas. And I agree. I've had the same responses for the last 40 plus years. And as my patience with these people is kind of running out, largely to do with one subject, which is the children abuse. And I wonder now whether a more radical approach is required with these people. So the question is, how radical? Well, my suggestion is perhaps we should no longer tolerate their brush-offs, mocking laughter and dismissiveness any further, and call it as it is. If, for example, they choose to ignore child trafficking, abuse, sexual molestations, ritual abuse and torture of children, none of which are conspiracies anymore, it's fact, even in their own portal people realm known as the mainstream media, we turn around and say, okay, fine, you don't want to hear it, but I want to say one final thing before you leave, is you are an accomplice to it. And also complicit in horrific child abuses. You've been given the evidence and chosen clearly to ignore that evidence. And that makes those people, because you have given the burden of knowledge of it over to them. We've carried this burden long enough, and it is a burden. And if they choose to ignore it, they are a condoner and complicit in their actions. And I hope they can live with themselves and then walk away. Leave them with their eyes rolling. Leave them with the shame. Why should we tolerate these people when they're ignoring heinous crimes at that level? They haven't got the excuse anymore. Oh, it's a conspiracy, and there's idiots on the internet spouting all kinds of lies. Some of the famous people, whether it be R. Kelly or others, have all been exposed. The Smallville actress Alison Mack, and there will be more. But it's time to let them have their own burdens and their tiny bubble world rippled for once, not ours. Because when you know stuff, and some have the ability to alter that path, you have a personal responsibility to do so. At the moment, it's only the people known as the alternative media that are doing that, whilst they carry on in their tiny bubble worlds. Everything's hunky-dory until something happens to one of their children. So we've done our part in exposing it and also absorbing it, as I deemed it sin-eating. It's time they swallowed some of it, in fact vast quantities of it, in my opinion. You tell them and make them, if they don't listen, that they are a condoner and complicit in it, because they choose to ignore it. And by doing that, we are then handing over our responsibility onto them. As a reminder, 49,000 children per day go missing for abuse purposes or malnutrition. Die. 49,000 per day. Those who choose to ignore those facts are ultimately responsible for it, not us. There's been talk of, you often hear it in the New Age, about the purple light, and I've told people it's the bullshit version. The real light, once you attain certain frequencies and certain levels of consciousness, is the golden column, not the purple light. Now, the reason for purple is on that level of consciousness, and I may cover this in greater depth in another show. There's like 3 rings of levels of consciousness. The first ring is red. Red is chaos, always was. Blood spilt. It's not a good colour, never was. It's the lowest form of consciousness. The second ring is blue. Blue means transformation. You still want to take the red pill? Now, what's happened along the lines of, with humans also being trapped, many of them, in the lower astral. It's another version of the veil and the AI system. That's why people see purple, because they're trapped between the red and blue levels of consciousness. You combine the 2 colours together, you get purple. The ultimate is to go into the blue and then onto the golden column, which is the centre ring. It takes a lot of work, trust me. It's not easily obtainable, but it's not impossible either. Once you stand in your own golden column, things for you change drastically. Final piece before we go into some questions. It's about the truth again and questions. This is a piece again I'd not covered last week, but I've added to this week because of certain questions that came up. And look, why do we accept so much as truth with no direct evidence to support it? This is not necessarily to do with the alternative media. I'm talking about life in general. I did a piece last year when I asked what to some is a ridiculous question. But if you think on it, it's not as ridiculous as it looks or sounds. And the question was, does Australia really exist? Like I said, to most that seems a ridiculous question. But most people have never been to Australia. So how can they definitively know that Australia exists as the truth? You can't. You 100% don't know whether Australia actually exists unless you've been. But most accept the proof of others that it does. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm making a point. You can apply this to so many of what we've learned throughout our lifetimes. Well, this lifetime anyway. It applies to all walks of life. We've just accepted so much of the narrative that's being given, when upon investigation into so many of those aspects of life, it renders the official narrative, in my opinion anyway, as a conspiracy. How ironic. The burden of proof, they say, in a criminal case is on the prosecutor, and proof in life is like the prosecutor in many court cases is meddled with, twisted, interfered with and coerced, whilst the public is in general largely ignorant and defends the system at all costs. Why? Well, largely because they don't want to appear as fools. But ironically, in their mirrored world, the fool's always in the mirror. Their mirror. Now, some people just never get things, no matter how much you explain them or how much you deliver to them. And we deliver a lot in this show. But this week I was asked to produce documents that were sent to the mainstream media last week and hand them over to other alternative media outlets. Well, there's two things about this that are completely wrong. Those documents are government level and above, and are not generally released to general public figures. I think most people would accept that. But excerpts of criminality contained in some of those documents have appeared in our shows. In many of them. Maybe our listeners are spoilt, or some of them anyway, and don't realise the inherent dangers related with this type of information that is delivered. Where you can't go on a short break without being stalked by hired assassins. Would you do it? This is the type of world we live in, where those exposing the truth at certain levels become targets. But just release the documents, really. How would you like walking around knowing that there's a sniper gun with a target on your head? Or black helicopters with gun turrets circling over your head as well? People have to really understand the depths and the levels they will go to block the truth. Life to them doesn't matter, only control. Now, point 2 is asking me to deliver them to the alternative media people is the biggest joke yet. I'm sorry, but it is. All of them know about our shows, and I mean all of them, and yet none of them have asked for me or Kim to come on their show and get what is now clearly verified truth in many cases of the stuff we've put out. Those persons or groups are not interested in the truth, period. You'll get small elements of it, but the rest of it is distorted lies versions they are told to put out in most cases in the alternative media. Otherwise, we would have had multiple requests to appear on their shows. We had one request from OIM, and that's it. I warned you all 2 years ago that around 75% of the alternative media figures were fake. I deliberately lowered that figure from what I knew personally, as it would appear that only a few are real, and it would have looked like I was playing the David Wilcock game, as I'm the only one with the intel. But the intel put out means it's not only me who gets it, everyone that picks it up also gets it. It's the information that's put out that is validated that's important, not who delivers it. But when you analyse it, the alternative media has had all kinds of documents put out via the internet on a plethora of subjects. But what have they done with it? Very little of it, in my opinion. They're too busy focusing on whether the earth is flat, round or square, or whether they're all going to die with an asteroid, Nibiru, some global pandemic, or alien invasions. All of which were ruse stories put out by rogue agencies, think tank groups designed to distract you. So you think putting out documents A, B or C will change the game overnight. That thinking is flawed, because the truth has already been put out multiple times on multiple subjects, and yet still people ask for more proof, truth or validation. But my question in return is, at which point of origin does truth become validated for you personally? The way I see it now, in many cases, that question remains unanswered by far too many in the alternative media. Far too many. Perhaps this is a reminder.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Hi all and welcome back. Those two pieces were for the alternative media. Can you handle the truth? Or are you just going to stay the great pretender? And if you're going to handle it and not be the pretender, then you've got to rout out the agency goons and the coven related clans operating in our midst and come together. Not my show's better than yours and all that rubbish. Divide and conquer. That's their game. It always was. So let's stop pretending and let's move forward in unison. Right, some questions. Layers upon layers of control have relegated us to continually give our power away, our choice. However, those Those of us who are seemingly awake in this false reality continually castigate the players of today for all the ills of society with good intention. My question is, if the linear time continuum is happening now, then what about justice served for both the Hitleries as well as the Hitlers of our Draco-controlled planet? The henchmen and women of the past are just as guilty in the grand scheme of our demise. Right, I'll answer that part. Yes, they are, and still do in hidden mode, particularly the Draco element. Rothschilds, courtesy of this show, have been exposed heavily. No one's hammered the Rothschilds more than this show, and it's for good reason as well. And we've taken the fight to them, and whilst it appears in many aspects slow, and we all want a certain event, which I will come to in the next part of your question, Pete, is I don't think anyone really realised the depth of what's gone on here. We've tried to cover as many aspects of it as we can, and do so with this show and many other shows, but the bigger picture of how far it goes is lost on many, and that's no surprise, and it's not a failure on their part either. It's staggering how it's all interconnected, and it's gone back for many, many thousands of years. Many, many thousands of years. About certain people with titles, be it kings or queens, or pharaohs, or the gods, have all done untold damage here to the not only the people but all species, be it off-world, be it plant life, be it the planet herself, and not only on this planet either. And it will take probably many lifetimes to gain all of the knowledge of what's gone on. You can't learn it all in 4 or 5 years. You may have learnt a lot, but trust me, there's an awful lot more to learn. And yes, they have to be held accountable. In essence, they, from an overview point of view, they are being held accountable now. They're not getting away with what they used to. They're coming up with all kinds of schemes and scams, like charging £99 for you as an upfront fee to purchase gas or petrol. It's a sign of desperation. The SSP meddling in zones that shouldn't be. Why? Because they're desperate, because they've been cut off from the technology that they think will help them going forward. It won't. They plan to use the desertification weapon. That failed. The Zika virus, that failed. Economic collapse, that failed. 90% genocide, that failed. World War III, that failed. Throwing large rocks at the planet, that failed. So there's lots of evidence where they're not getting their own way anymore. And like I said, we all want a defining event. There won't be a defining event for the all. It may be one aspect will define it for one person, but that may be different for another person. To some people, it might be an event might be arresting, for argument's sake, Anne, the Bushes, what's left of the family. They're not all there. And the recent one that died actually died on January the 1st, 2014, not last month. So Cheney, Rumsfeld, Obama, that to a lot of people will be an event. Releasing the trust funds may be an event to some. ET disclosure, even though we've already had it, may be another event to some. So it depends, when you said in your second part, how to proceed with or without a major transforming event. We've already had transforming events. Look what I've just said in the last few minutes about what didn't take place. The veil went down. The psychotic AI went down. The Draco were forced out. They still operate in the shadows away from here, but they're not physically here as much as they used to be. To me, they're events. And they've already taken place. And it's like the last piece about what is your validation of proof or truth? Or who is? Who or what? Is it Trump? Is it CNN? Is it this show? Is it Randy Morgan's? Is it Drake? And these are the things that people need to really think on when they keep saying an event. And I've said all along, there's no light switch event. Some of the events have already happened. It's about thinking on a different level and going, right, okay, that was an event. I didn't get it. Because you were looking for something that you hadn't really defined. And that's the same with the truth and proof. You have no overall authority as to who that provides that proof or truth. So if that's the case, no matter how much gets put out, nothing ever gets validated, and nothing ever appears to happen when it's already has. It's like technology. People think it's the future. No, it's the past. Long past. There's always 6,000 human advancement patents waiting to be delivered. But these clowns won't release it unless they can monetize it or control it, or both. So, next part of your question, how do we forgive and move on from today to a new tomorrow without relearning the truth of our past? Well, I think there should be some sort of course in schools learning about some of this. I think the solution I put forward of a dedicated truth channel, primetime TV, is the way to go forward also, where we learn the real truth. Did we go to the moon or not? And here's the evidence that defines whether that's correct or not. This is a tall order indeed when we've all had a hand in the involvement of causation, plus our justice system is totally corrupt. How to proceed with or without a major transforming event is also part of the equation, is it not? Not to mention media corruption at the very top of their game. Again, the media are being attacked. We in the alternative community can do much more to expose them and turn the heat on them. Don't turn their channels on. If they have no one listening, they have no channel, they have no advertising, they have no funding, and they shut down. Or the Rothschilds have to get deeper pockets. So that's something everyone can do and take part in. Why should we tolerate these people? But the media is give kudos to Trump. He's attacked them left, right and centre. We can support that by disrupting their blogs and comments Thomas, how do you think we can best prepare for assisting humanity when the truth really impacts on their reality? Apart from doing our shadow work and centering ground in children. Well, that's the key to it. You can only assist others if you have assisted yourself to be the best you can be, given the conditions and the health and the people around you. We've done a lot of work with this show on the psychological aspect. In essence, I would say, from that aspect, this has been one of the most important shows. Not this particular show tonight, but over the course of THI, because we've gone through, not everything's the cabal's fault. That's a big step for many, because it's always easier to blame somebody else. But when you see the depth of how silly we've been of going along with it through ignorance initially, because we were unaware, and then so many choosing to complete ignorant in a nasty way of ignoring the real facts and wrapping themselves in a tiny illusionary bubble world. Far too many have done that. I don't, if it comes out in a plethora of like a shock and awe, I don't think initially we can help them too much. I think it's going to tip their system upside down. I'm not too sure many will be able to handle it. Basically, if you end up finding out your whole life has been a lie on so many levels. Even if you just go on the financial aspect, that's going to tip people upside down. Then they find out that the certain rogue agencies have been poisoning all the people deliberately for testing weapons and all kinds of other stuff. How do people handle that? How do people who have been fooled beyond all doubt live with the guilt and the shame of the people like us who they've shunned and classed as nuts? There's a lot of guilt with that. All of us have lost family members and partners and wives and husbands and close friends because of we sought the truth. The overview of that is the most ridiculous thing that anyone can ever say. I ditched somebody because they wanted to know the truth. Not I ditched somebody because they told lies. No, because they told the truth. You can't blame the cabal for that. Partially, maybe. So initially, I'm not too sure we'll be able to help them too much other than putting an arm around the shoulder. But I think they're going to lose it. And that's their own fault. We did help massively, and they chose to ignore it. They liked the City of Light pill. For those of you not familiar with that, go and watch the 100 series. It explains human history rather well. The ark came from the sky, not on the ocean. If we try to remote view to see more of what's behind the curtain, will we be wasting our time because they could be interfering with our viewing? Depends who they are on the other side. In Assassin's Creed 3, Theam Kenway, who was the Grand Master of the Templars in the game, always referred to themselves as the Order. Is this the same Order we are familiar with, or a different one altogether? There's a vast array of orders, and each one thinks they're more important than the other. The reality is, whilst they may certain ones, and the way it's going now, they're all fighting each other, which is good. But from their perspective, that their particular order might be more important than the other order, the reality is they're all interlinked, or they were. And that, again, to go back to the first question, that's an event in itself. All the parents went down. The covens have collapsed. Now, the maximum amount of covens that can possibly be left is 2. There was 13. Again, that's an event. They're the dark magic people. Send jinns, smoky black figures. You may see out the corner of your eye, or you may see full on with your eyes. That's them. Or 1 or 0 covens left altogether. Again, that's an event. The P2 Lodge. And many of the Templars have stepped down. Many of the Freemason groups have stepped down and are actually helping. Are they the Order? Again, that's a major event for this planet and we the people, which kind of gets forgotten and overlooked. With them all still interlinked, we couldn't have brought this system down. We would be going on for lifetimes. Basically, we've trashed it to the point where they're kind of on their knees in many aspects and hanging upside down in many other. In under a decade. And yet people still ask for events. That's why I keep saying in the show, you have to overview it and you have to think and act different. It's the key. You overview things and think. That's why I do the pondering pieces. Gets people thinking in a different way to what we've been used to all our lives. So that other way is drone biobot, where everyone thinks and says and repeats the same narrative. It's not saved as well, is it? Do you have any information on about the heart electromagnetic field? I wouldn't describe it as that. The electromagnetic field was the veil. The frequency field, which is, and how it interacts with other living things, or how it interacts with our PSI field. If you operate from the heart, and you have to clear all your chakras, and you have to do your shadow work and the inner work, and go through the red, blue, and into the gold field of consciousness, then you're operating from the heart center. Your whole persona, frequency and vibration changes at a far higher rate than most others. It has a resonant effect for those around you. Suddenly animals and insects and birds and all kinds of other things come to you rather than you going to them. It's the key. It's not, again, it's not a case of sitting there and singing Kumbaya and meditating for a few seconds here and there. It takes a lot of work. It's not impossible, and it is achievable if you are prepared to do the work. If everyone operated from the heart and did or to operate from the heart, you have to deal with the bulk, if not all, of your shadows by integrating them. All the trauma has to be integrated, dealt with, absorbed, and pushed out. Too many people have got their glasses filled with trauma and upset and distortion and guilt and shame, insecurity, but of various, a plethora of reasons. Well, how can any, whether it's a machine or a human vessel, operate with that type of what is in essence a virus? Trauma is not good energy to hold on to. So if you keep adding to the traumas and making every event over dramatising certain events as it's the end of the world because, for argument's sake, the shingle fell off my roof or the car broke down or whatever, you're just topping that glass up and it's overfilling. So it's got no room to then operate with the new frequencies, which does change you rather rapidly. But operating from the heart is the ultimate for us all. There's no real desire from there to operate in a way that's not conducive to the all. Including the cabal, providing they've seen the error of their ways. Boy, they have far more trauma to deal with than we do. So I hope that helps. I was wondering if you know anything about rituals surrounding birthdays. I've read and heard that eating of a cake is cannibalistic in nature, but has been objurgated by years of passed down tradition. What are your thoughts on birthdays? Well, it was the Germans that first introduced the idea of the birthday cake, but it was the Greeks who had a moon-shaped cake, which was to honour Artemis, and the candles were to resemble the moon being lit. So that's the history of the birthday cake. I'm not too sure it's cannibalistic in nature. The Catholic Mass is cannibalistic. The red wine, blood, and a little piece of bread is cannibalistic. That's a ritual. I know that's going to upset a lot of people, but that's the truth, whether you like it or you're not. You don't have to accept it. But I'm not too sure eating birthday cake is, it could be, but not that I'm aware of. I'm unaware of it anyway. I'll leave for time. Could the Manor Trust funds be used to counter the 5G agenda, and have there been any proposals put in for that effort? There is an overall agenda to counter that, and the removal of rogue elements will certainly counter that nonsense anyway. Don't want to say too much. There is, let's just say there's ongoing things. Can you expand on how the evil king was killed and approximately how long ago? Tank reference recently. Was this being known as Anu? No, it wasn't Anu, it was Marduk. And it was November of 2016. That particular entity who was in human form here. So most people are expecting to look like a reptilian. Below is reptilian. The public figure, the guy known as M, looked black hair, roughly late 30s, early 40s, very dapper, and had a Asian looking, is what I would say. There was slightly slanted eyes, not full slanted, but slightly. Pale brown skin, and went about in a dark black suit with a white tie, a white shirt and a black tie. Very, very dapper. I'm trying to remember the character in this series, the event. Michael Lee is a reasonable comparison as to what the evil king Marduk looked like in human form. Very dapper, very nasty. Is there any public national claim against patent holders, whether for modification, chemtrails, GMO fracking, as a violation of the Bill of Rights? Well, there is no Bill of Rights. Bush got rid of that. Patriot Act and all that BS. If we have full announcements and full application of sovereignty, which is still not being applied because of the clowns threatening and blackmailing, then we would return to natural law, and those would all be eliminated. If Cheney paid for impunity of the Clean Water Act, when will this be addressed, overturned as criminal? Ongoing. What's your opinion of Anna von Wright's instructions to change your political status by copyrighting your name as it appears on your birth certificate? She gives an example on our website called Clarification regarding copyright to trade your name. You can do it. You can do lots of things. You can declare yourself sovereign. Doesn't mean that the alleged authorities, as they're called, are going to apply it. America's been declared sovereign, and yet we're still lobbing missiles at certain countries. So you can go and do a lot of things. You know, we've all heard about the straw man accounts and claiming back to your birth certificate and changing your nationality status. It goes on and on and on. But you try, of course the other one is the not having a driver's license, and that's fine until you get pulled up by a thug cop and you start spouting sovereignty and Bill of Rights and amendment this and amendment that, and If you're lucky, you'll get a clout around the head or a kick in the teeth. But if you're unlucky, you'll get shot, given the behaviour of some of them. So there's been a range of these type of this fixes this and this fixes that, and there's been minimal success in doing it. The majority of them have ended up in prison. Just ask Heather Giraffe. Ask Sean David Morton. William Shrout, another one who's going to jail. They won't be the last either. Telling you to do this, that and the other, and don't pay your taxes, and don't do this and don't do that. I'm telling you to do it all as it applies now. Keep your head down. These people don't like it. We either all have to do it or none. There's no in between. You know, one or two decide, I'm not paying taxes, they'll just drag you down to the nearest jail cell. Or the internal Rothschild service, known as the IRS, will send thugs. You try telling them that it's illegal to pay income tax on your labour. These people don't listen. And they get nasty. So I'm advising to just carry on as it is until there's sufficient numbers to go en masse and go, you know what, we're not doing that. You know, you could start with a small town and say, we don't need driver's licenses, or we are not paying income tax. The whole town, you're going to arrest the whole town? You're going to shoot the whole town? That's how you do it. But not as individuals. Too many have gone to jail or been picked off or financially ruined or been violently abused for doing so or stating so. Why is Theresa May's husband being allowed to get away with making money off other people suffering in Syria? There should be some serious repercussions, I would have thought. Yes, I agree. Why? Largely because the public allows it. That's the top and bottom line of it. If the public en masse stood up, what are they going to do? Arrest everyone? You know, we've seen many examples of the public standing up and changing events. Why is Monsanto banned in over 30 countries? Because the people stood up. We did a show about a month ago, was it? 6 weeks ago, about people power, and covered the whole range of them. Look at how many presidents and prime ministers have now been arrested for alleged fraud and corruption, when it's a whole lot more, as we've covered in this show. Again, that's because of the alternative media. Why is suddenly, is it 57 currently, senators are not standing again after November? I think that's normal. It's not. Again, that's people power. We just don't recognise it as such. Any ideas what countries have been declared sovereign to date apart from the USA and Kingdom of Manor? If there are any, what country is most likely to grant their citizens and sovereignty if asked for it? I don't believe any others to date, and there's been a lot of threats going on. Trust me, a lot of threats going on globally. Violence and death and blackmail and whatnot. From what I gathered, there was 130 odd countries considering maybe those 130 should have a private hearing and declare themselves sovereign en masse. You can't attack 140 countries. Maybe the continent of Africa can all get together because the British, Dutch, German goons are trying to enroll them into the Commonwealth, all African countries. And the Commonwealth's nothing to do with the Queen, I might add. Once they roll you into the Commonwealth, they steal off the commoner, which should be the real name of it. Because then they control all your in-ground resources. Like they do with Canada, like they do with America. Same thing, the Crown. Ireland, you name it. Citizens becoming sovereign will be a fair bit of time yet. A couple of citizens here and there might get sovereignty, but the danger of giving ordinary people sovereignty is there's nothing stopping them taking over that country. Of course, the clowns who ran the trust before Kim have all had their sovereignty taken away, and they're threatening the Queen of England to give them sovereignty back, and to date she's refused all of them under heavy pressure. And chaos than there already is. So the idea of citizens becoming sovereign, yes, it is attainable, but the danger is, here's an example. There was a GoFundMe request I was sent just before I went away, where this particular person had declared themselves sovereign and had it rubber stamped, and then they got ill. And because you're sovereign, you have to pay for yourself, not the system. Sovereignty means you don't get any benefits. So there needs to be a new system in place where everyone gets benefits, sovereign or otherwise. So for sovereignty you don't need, although some people still will, technically you don't need a driver's license. The sovereign technically, and most of them don't pay taxes. But they don't get anything out of the system either. So you have to be careful. And this is what some of these goons on the internet don't tell you that. Like in the UK, if you declare yourself sovereign and you have National Health Service, you're unable to attend because you're sovereign, you haven't paid for it. You may have paid for it up to now, but if you're declared sovereign, you've lost all that funding. So you don't get any benefits. This is what the other side of the coin, and why I tell people not to do it until we get a full new system with full clarity and full transparency, and all the countries signed up as sovereign and all acting in accordance beneficial to each other. Then you can declare the people sovereign. It's something to support it. Do chemtrails affect other dimensions? Yes and no. Are we in the midst of a sixth mass extinction since all wildlife, insects and marine life is dying off? No. Can you say something about spiritual laziness, why we have it and how to overcome it? Generally speaking, I'm a very hard worker, but when it comes to doing inner work, it seems I would rather do anything else. And I don't know others like this as well. Why do some humans struggle so much with spiritual development? Any insights will be greatly appreciated. Well, I kind of answered this because I didn't ask this question last week on the MeWe site, and I'll repeat what I said there. The reason is it's a battle of external and internal again. You mentioned you're a very hard worker, and yet you wouldn't do the inner work. And the reason being is personal gratification. Is you do hard work, other people notice, other people praise you, so you get that external praise in. You do inner work, and only you know, really, whether you've done it or you haven't. You can continue to lie to yourself that you have when you haven't. But the only one you're fooling is yourself. And it comes down to personal gratification, seeking it from the external point of view rather than the internal point of view. And this applies to other aspects of life, like religion. It's an external entity you're praying to, giving away your energy. You're not getting anything back. That's the illusion, that you get something back. But if you pray inward, you get a lot more back than you realise. And this is the way society is always done. You want material things. Again, it's external, not internal. I want loads of money. External. Does it make you happier? Does it clear the trauma within you? No. You do. Yes, other people in the group or close friends and family may assist you with it on an understanding. But ultimately it comes down to you. So spiritual laziness is you are still seeking the external source. That's the key. Everything, your truth, the better version of you is already inside you. You just have to pull it out. I hope that helps. Not just a question, but others. What's the latest on the Wells Fargo and other major banks? Not got much update on that, given I've been absent for a week. It's still going ahead as far as I know. Citigroup is almost complete or completed, from what I gather. And the Wells Fargo is going to be 60 to 90 days of review of all the details of what's gone on in Wells Fargo and all the assets, and basically a good going over before some decision is announced. That's what we were told last month. So we're about 30 days into that. So we'll leave it at that. Is the steady ramping up of oil prices any indication of an imminent financial crash or a distraction of sources? Well, there's no real reason for oil prices to be going up, period. We've got the largest glut of oil in history, stacked up in storage and warehouses and pipes everywhere. So it's yet again an illusion. And yet again, who pays for it? For that illusion? We do. And I'm still to find a valid reason for Trump announcing a 25 cents a gallon increase on gas. It's gone up 50 to $1 in certain regions already. So what's the point of having extra tax money or extra wages if you're going to increase the price of everything else? Give in one hand, take in the other. Well, we've had enough of that shit. Enough is enough. You know, oil, the reason for the fun and games of the oil and why the price went down was to block the oil and the dinar becoming the RV currency. They were going to use that as the asset base, and oil was going to be the new exchange of currency via the dinar. That's no longer happening, but they're ramping it up again. I got told many years ago that they'd never go back above 60 again, but it already has for the first time in a long time. That may be a temporary measure to stabilise certain other industries that are on the point of total collapse. So from that aspect, if they all went down at once, then it would have a major impact on us all. So given there's a lack of liquidity in the government circles, in spite of Kim's efforts to really float all the countries, then this is likely what's taken place with that. Was Hillary never meant to win? No, it was Trump that was never meant to win. It was a one-horse race that only Hillary won, and Trump wasn't in it to win, and he knew that when he started. Paid actor. Some people won't like that statement, but I've told people that 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago in fact now. But things and dynamics changed. Because basically if Anne would have won that election, we wouldn't be doing this show. What these clowns do is they, like they did with Iran and Iraq, they will give certain funds and certain deals, and then they will bomb them into oblivion. And then they send in Halliburton and Bechtel and all the other companies to rebuild what they've bombed, making more money and establishing control bases, and that's how they've worked. But Anne had basically sold all America's future in-ground resources to Russia and other countries. All of them. That was signed in the August before the election. That's how sure that she had already won. She was signing off on all kinds of deals. So steps were taken to stop that. And it was nothing to do with the Russians. Period. Is the oft-repeated phrase, even though Trump is not perfect, we are much better off than that Hillary did not win? Yes, it's the lesser of two evils. Trump's not perfect. He's done some good things. He's done some things that I don't agree with, and I will call him out on it. I'm only interested in politicians doing right for the people. I'm not interested in who they are, whether they're presidents, senators, or anybody else, kings or anything. Are you doing right by the people is my stock answer, or stock question. Because if you're not, I'm going to call you out. It's as simple as that. Is it actually a psyop to get us to accept the evil that is only the lesser than? Are we being led by a Judas goat with POTUS et al? That is possible. It could still go either way. Like I said, he's done some good things, and he's done some not good things, but I don't think many people would like to be in his shoes at the moment. I think many people maybe would think they would like to be in his shoes until you find out you've got guns pointed at you from all corners. You're going to do this, or we're going to kill X, Y, and Z. You're going to do this, or we're going to put these pictures out, or we're going to put this story out, or whatever. That's the levels that go on minute by minute at that top end currently. It's not pleasant, it's ugly. But the fact that it's actually going on means there's an event. Like I mentioned earlier, it's an event that it's actually going on, that they're actually threatening a president. All the other presidents just did as they were told. This one doesn't. He doesn't like being told to do anything. Ego plays a big part in Mr. Trump's life. You can play in it, you can also abuse it, and it can also be abused. But I wouldn't rule out either statement. Yes, Trump is the lesser of evil, which still makes it evil. But he'd also deliver something that would expand his ego beyond all reason and really save America and its people and subsequently the world. Whether that appeals to him more and continuing and being king in the illusion world, that's entirely up to him and the team around him. He has the support and he has the means with which to do it. The question, which I think will be revealed before the end of the year, is which way it will go. I don't know what's going on with Macedonia and Greece. Apologies on that question. Very historic region. Last week's show you mentioned the Rothschilds made a deal with the Chinese elders in and around 1520, yet according to official history, Meyer Amschel Bauer, who's seen as the progenitor of the Rothschilds, was only born in 1744. Can you tell me something about the hidden history of the family that explains that this bloodline did business with the Chinese elders in the 16th century? Yes, you're getting their version of history, not the real version of history. You're getting his story, not our story. I believe there was documents supporting that $20 million loan or offer. Whether they'll be able to be released is another matter. But the Rothschilds come in various names, like you said, Bauer. They're all interlinked. They just change the name by one letter and just change history. It's like, I know this person's from Holland, the De Beers. What if their link is to Bauer? Just change one letter, haven't you? Bauer was spelt B-A-U-E-R. It's also spelt B-A-Y-E-R. Also spelt in the Anglican version of B-O-W-E-R. All the same people. Basically, the Rothschilds have gone around seeding their reptilian DNA seed in all the royalty and all the high society places since the 1500s onwards. A deliberate program, so they controlled everything. Banks, you name it. IRS, American government, military. But it's all to do with the history they give you. But never underestimate the word magic and the changing of one letters and the misplaced translation of the name into other languages. So that's how they've got away with hiding all this stuff. Right, on that note, I think I'm going to end this week's show. I think the key aspect of this show is things are ongoing. Clowns are still playing games. SSP still think they rule everywhere. They don't. And if they continue, they will pay the ultimate price. I'm hoping the steps taken in the past week, and certainly over the past 18 months, since a meeting back in March of last year, that we will continue to show the better side of humanity. We're not all like them. And we work together to defeat this common enemy. They're your enemy as well as ours. Let's get rid of them, and let's either move you on back to your home world and fix it together. Let's do proper trade deals and peace deals, and not disseminate rogue technology that ultimately destroys others and always ends up coming back on yourself. Many of you have given these clowns rogue technology which they've misused, and ultimately the karma goes back on yourself, and then you end up, the ones who give them the technology, being destroyed themselves. We can't, and certainly you can't keep repeating that same mistake and expecting a different outcome. But the outcome of changes is derived by each species sending their warrior class of people or beings to meetings, playing dick swinging games. There is plenty of people and beings that are not in control or the authority, who have far more common sense, heart, knowledge, and a will and desire to be a real change for the benefit of all, not just humans, and I mean all. Let's go forward together and fix this once and for all. Right. I'll be on next on OYM, with OYM, on a round table discussion on Saturday. I look forward to that at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. It was kind of cobbled together a bit, but I think it was, we've covered quite a lot again. And we go forward with renewed vigour. We do have more help. Perhaps you should play that song again. No, maybe not. Let's play this one. Right, this has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.